Hello and welcome to Oz by Drone. Now, this is a bit of a special edition. There's some music that was meant to be playing a couple of moments ago and it wasn't, and I'll go and fix that up. I know exactly why it didn't work, but that's another story. I'll share the music in a minute. But we've also not got any plan today. It's totally unplanned with the exception of two things. One, Jeff is filling in because someone who was going to be the co-host, Lloyd, had to disappear at the last minute. He had a family emergency. Don't worry, it's not his wife. It's one of his dogs that's now at the vet and getting looked after. So he may be in later, he may not be, I don't know at this stage. But Jeff came in with like literally 5 minutes notice and I said, well, let's just talk about some stuff and see what happens. So welcome, Jeff, and thank you for dropping in. And now I've got no audio from Jeff. He's going to air, but not to me. Let's see if I can fix that. See what happens when you don't have a producer. You're working now, I think. Yep. I think it's okay. Give us a confirmation in the chat as well if you can hear Jeff. So, Jeff. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks. So, what's happening in your world?
Along some information that I think is sort of news. GoPro cameras nationwide and from some reports even internationally can't take off. They're completely grounded.
Okay, we had no audio from Jeff coming up as well. I think I've fixed that. So people, again, give me a 1 if you've got audio.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test. Okay.
So rewind. Jeff, what's happening in your world?
Well, besides the fact that I have become a professional at being able to speak without using my voice, I'm just recovering from spending almost a couple of weeks reviewing FAA documents, and so I'm really tired of reading FAA documents. But so we did our show last night and talked about the new proposed rules, and obviously, really try to stress to people that they need to get out to the FAA website and start putting in their feedback. So that was the main focus. Today was sort of a relaxation day, but Kelly Green had reached out and shared some information with Ken and I. Apparently, the GoPro cameras internationally are grounded. They won't take off.
Awesome. That's the best news ever. And now that I've got us both on, the music starts finally working, but that's okay. I'll get rid of that and the music can come back in a minute. But karma's being grounded. That is the best thing ever since sliced bread.
Well, but this wasn't grounded because of anything that was planned. This was grounded basically because the drone, for some reason right now, cannot get a GPS lock. And when you take it out and you try to get a GPS lock, it also won't do a compass calibration at all either. So, and this has been reported throughout the GoPro forums. Kelly shared with me part of the Facebook group that he's part of. They had people internationally reporting that they couldn't do this. It has been shared with GoPro, and I know that they're probably looking into it. But as of right now, GoPro cameras can't take off.
And it couldn't have happened to a nicer drone. So the reason though, so we've heard previously from Dan, he was looking at the Solar and he made a comment that you couldn't previously get good satellite locks because there were some changes in the global GPS system. They were decommissioning some of the older satellites. And as a result of that, that was what his understanding was for the Solo, and there was a firmware update so it could connect to some newer satellites that it couldn't talk to before. I'm hoping that GoPro will do the same thing.
they were doing a lot of changes and upgrades to the GPS network, and they are changing out satellites, and it's a phased thing that they're doing, and basically there have been hints that older systems, things that use the older GPS format, won't function within this new environment. And if that's true, the Karma example is the first one that I've seen where this, is actually occurring. Now, the other drone that potentially can be impacted by this is the Phantom 3 Standard. That's also one that uses the older GPS models. So I told Kelly that in the morning I was going to charge up my Standard and see whether or not it was going to get a GPS connection. So I'll make sure that I share that with people as to whether or not the Standard kicks off in the morning or not.
Yeah. So it's not actually the first one. It was the Solo as well. And Dan actually did some videos on that and confirmed that there were issues with the Solo. And he solved it with some firmware updates. Of course, the Solo is all open source now, so that's not a problem for them. The Karma, on the other hand, that might be a problem for them. Depends if they actually want to go and rehire the developers that they've already fired to go and write software. That might be a challenge.
Or if their community has any sort of grassroots group that's trying to keep the drone alive, then
but they've got to have the source code. They haven't released it open source, so it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, I had my own little product. We invested in the little Anki Vector, which I love this little robot to death, and the company went out of business. The source code wasn't available, and there was a group of people that loved this robot as much as I did, and they've been reverse engineering the thing for the last year, and they've actually made great strides in getting to the point where they had the code. They were ready to be able to set it up where you could redirect the format for it to receive signals from your PC versus a server somewhere in the world. And right about the time that they're ready to release this, another company comes along and buys the rights to Anki and says, we're going to revive the entire line. So the Cosmo, the Anki Vector, the Anki Overdrive race car system, all that stuff has gotten new life. So I'm really kind of happy about it. I'm looking forward to seeing Vector run around my desk for the next couple of years.
And that worked because someone actually stepped up and said, we're going to buy this thing. The challenge is, who wants to buy Karma?
Give me a second.
I don't have the sound effects.
Yeah, I can...
Couldn't think. Kelly.
Can't think of anybody.
That's about it. Yeah. That's about it.
Can't think of anybody. But I mean, if it's something that can be adjusted with firmware,
and it can be,
it would be very interesting to see if DJI, if the GPS on my Phantom 3 Standard is impacted by this, I would be very interested to see if DJI actually releases an update that would fix that so that the standards continue flying, even though they're not supported.
Let's go back further. The Phantom 2.
Yeah, the Phantom 2s are also, they use a legacy GPS system. Actually, the GPS on that was a separate device that would, connect. So that was something else.
Yeah. Okay. So, as I said at the very beginning, Jeff's just filling in. We've got no plan. We've got no news. But what else is newsworthy? Everyone's been talking about it, the FAA regulations, and you kind of alluded to it a minute ago. Just to share my kind of thoughts, and I've shared this with a few people. At the end of the day, there is going to be drone identification broadcasting a la ADS-B, something like that for drones. That's going to happen. That's undoubtable. And the only question is then, what technology are you going to use for it? And are you going to do it in a way that is smarter than ADS-B? So ADS-B, as we all know, and I've spoken about it many times before, can be spoofed, and you can, if you were malicious, you could go and set up something and make your drone ID the same as, say, Ken Heron, and you could go and fly it over the Capitol building and
the FAA considered ADS. Well, the FAA considered ADS-B, and they shot it down because of the fact that the other problem with ADS-B is that it runs off of a frequency that If you have millions of drones, right, you're going to saturate that radio frequency to the point that it's not going to be useful or be functional in that fashion. So the idea of using ADSB
but even
is
aside
good.
from that, it was only 24-bit in terms of the identifiers, right? So think about that in terms of the scale. It works for aviation now. It was never designed to be appropriate for something beyond that. But yeah.
Well, and DJI has their license plate system, that's something that exists in the market. But here in the United States, DJI is taking a beating, from the federal government right now because of the China debacle between the companies and Huawei, et cetera. So the last thing that the federal government's going to do is go, oh yeah, let's use the Chinese solution. So that's probably not going to sit well. It is something that is there that can be tapped into if necessary, but I don't think that it would be the forefront. So that's the reason why I see the FAA coming out and saying, well, we're going to develop this new system. And that's fine. I don't mind them coming out and saying that, we would like the industry to develop this system over the next 3 years to have the ability for drones to be able to identify themselves in the air. I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is the fact that they want to hamper other aspects, right? The model aviation community, they didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve to be crippled the way that these rules are going to cripple them.
Can I give you a thought?
Flying,
they've
been flying for 30, 40 years, if not longer, and never had a problem.
Let me give you a thought. If you transposed some of the regulations in other countries, and in Australia, no matter what quad you're flying, it's 30 meters from people is the rule unless they're directly involved with the operation of the aircraft. That's the rule in Australia. If hypothetically that rule was transposed and you were having a look at anything that is not running a drone ID kind of solution, had that rule imposed in the US. It's something you don't have today, but it's something we're already used to. Do you think that'd be a good middle ground?
Well, I mean, the thing is that the rules that have been adopted by the UK, by Australia, by India, and multiple other countries were modeled after what we had in place here in the United States with a couple of modifications. And their rules weren't terrible. They didn't kill the hobby. They didn't kill the use of drones for the general public. Whereas, the stuff that the FAA is talking about would severely hamper the hobbyist environments. They would severely hamper the model aviation community. I don't even want to talk about the FPV guys. They're in a whole world of hurt under these rules. But the idea of killing that group or hampering that group, the hobbyists are the future 107 pilots. That's where you start, right? That's our growth pool for future drone pilots. And the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to make it impossible for new people to come into the hobby, learn how to fly the drone, spend the time, as I did for years, practicing to learn the hobby, and not have the opportunity, that we did to learn it effectively and move up. You're gonna kill the growth, and you're also gonna kill the what's the word I'm looking for? The innovation that goes along with that. Think about it this way. If you compare what you were flying in 2014 and 2015 to what you're flying now, okay, in that short window of time, how much and how fast and how amazing these drones have grown and become just literally little flying computers. That happened in this environment. The minute that you cut that environment in half or in thirds or none at all, where's the innovation? Where's the impetus for any of these companies to come into this environment and say, yeah, I want to make something new, or I want to make something challenging, or I want to make something exciting. Where's the next Skydio? Where's the next, company to come into the fray and decide to take on DJI? Because you know what DJI is going to do. DJI is going to look at the rules. They're going to figure out every which way they need to develop a drone to get around the rules or meet the minimum requirements of the rules, and they're going to put it on the market and people will buy it.
Yeah. Highly possible. We've got Lloyd in the background. I'll bring you in a couple of seconds, Lloyd. Welcome back. Just give us a couple of seconds. So back to my question. Yes, it happened in that market, but would you personally think it is an acceptable middle ground to go with what I was suggesting?
Yeah, no, I think the rules that are in Australia and the rules that are in India and other countries that are similar to what we have now with just some minor restrictions are acceptable. I thought none of that stuff to me is something that would be abhorrent to take on in the United States. What I think that needs to happen is that the community, the drone community as a whole, needs to reach out and respond back to the FAA and say, look, we still want to have a hobbyist environment. We still want to have some freedoms in the hobbyist environment, because that's where the creativity is. That's where the innovation is.
Yeah. Okay. Look, thank you for filling in for a couple of minutes. We're getting up to 1:15 the hour. Let's bring Lloyd on as well. And Lloyd, just share with us briefly what happened, Lloyd. Is everything all good, or?
You talking about what happened is, for those, I haven't said anything about this, but my dog basically blew his knee out this last week, and he's a giant breed. He's a Great Pyrenees. Wow. And to get the surgery done, they said it was going to be between $3,000 to $5,000. I don't have that kind of money. So they were supposed to call an hour ago, and we were going to discuss it, and we just figured we were going to lose him. But I guess over the last 45 minutes, they, and with the young lady that you guys saw her getting sick doing the Vegemite challenge on my videos, well, she works for this vet, and she apparently told him how much he meant to us. And the vet gave him a good shot of stuff to keep him happy over the weekend, and gave us some really good drugs for him. And on Monday, she's calling a couple of her colleagues in, and I think going to call in some markers to get it down to where we can at least afford to have him operated on. So
hopefully they can come up with a solution for you, or stretch out payments for a while or something. Just
I'd do payments if they would let me, but it's, you can't get a loan on a dog.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I keep thinking when I had my shoulder surgery, if my kids had decided to have me put to sleep instead of letting me spend the money to get my shoulder fixed, that's always in the back of my mind. I'm getting that age now. It's like, maybe we just have the old man put down.
I'm keeping my health as high as I can, because I guarantee you when I get sick, they're going to pick me out of the backyard.
Yeah, that's it. That's what and my son's a cop, so he'd know where to hide. He'd know where to hide the bodies.
There you
go. Anyway,
so we got him home. He got a reprieve. So
yeah. Anyway, Jeff filled in, and I thank you very much for doing that, Jeff. And I'm detecting in your body language you're trying to make a stage left.
Well, see, I've got 5 very hungry children that pretty soon are going to do that whole backyard thing in a minute if I don't get in there and make them some food. So,
Jeff, before you go, can I ask one question?
Fire away.
Where's your pink Captain America shield?
It's back over there.
Oh, I can't see it in this shot. You got it covered up. There you go. Okay. All right, good.
It's not a pink Captain America shield. How many times I got to tell you that?
Hey, at least I'm not, singing, birds the word, Hey,
no, that thing now is taking on a life of its own, the pink Captain America shield. But to reiterate one more time, it's a spinnaker that has different genres of movies on it. And when the family can't agree as to what movie they're going to watch one night, we'll spin it, and whatever it stops on, that's what we watch.
And what are the options?
Action, romance, comedy, drama, all the breakdowns.
Action and romance. Pink Captain America.
And with that, I'll say thank you very much for being with us, Jeff.
Thanks for
Have a
filling
great
in, Jeff.
day.
I
Have a
appreciate
great
it.
day. Okay. See you later, sir.
Bye.
Okay, Lloydie. Oh,
I just had to do that. I started that.
of course you did.
Well, I don't know when I started that. It was one of the times we were in a chat like this, and I said, "Is that a pink Captain?" First, I thought it was a pink Wonder Woman shield, and then I got a better look at it. It looks more like Captain America. So,
Yeah.
yeah, me being me.
Yeah. Of course you being you. So while we're here, I'm just doing stuff in the background, and there we go. That looks a little bit better. So today we're doing something a little bit different. We've had our news segment at the beginning, and now we're going to move into the mystery in the well. This is a tale. It's a true tale, a true story. Some of you may know that I recently went on a journey of exploration, exploring my family heritage, my family roots, finding out where we came from. And as part of that, I journeyed to Mudgee, Gulgong, Walla, and all sorts of other places in between. Okay, let's kill the music. That's enough. But as part of it, though, I found out that Greg is hiding the body. What happened to his producer? By the way, speaking of which, you can do the chat things on the screen if you feel so inclined, Lloydie. It's turned on.
Okay.
So, as part of this journey, I had a look at a lot of material doing genealogy research and building out a family tree. So what? I'll tell you where it gets interesting, and I'll just put this on the screen. So this is one of the relatives that I found as part of my exploration, and we find some interesting text in here, and the death of a man and wife, and I'll make that a little bit bigger if I can. Let's try that. Not great. There we go. Death of a man and wife. New inquiry may be ordered in Sydney on Saturday. Dramatic developments are expected to result from police reports following the holding in camera. And for those who are not familiar with that term, in camera means in private or in secret, of an inquest on Wednesday by the Windsor District Coroner, Mr. H.S. Johnson, claiming to have discovered new evidence of a sensational nature. Police officers will now press to have the inquests reopened. To do this, a Supreme Court order would have to be obtained. The inquest on Wednesday was on Alan Ford Dunstan, 48 of Sackville, an orchardist who was found shot dead on his property on December 29 when city detectives called to question him concerning his wife's death. Now, I'll just pause there and I'll give you the first little fact. The first little fact that I've found in other articles is that he was found shot dead by a double-barrel shotgun with 2 shots to his head. Now, that by itself seems a little bit unusual. I mean, double-barrel shotgun, 2 shots. Let's continue. So as we continue down here, the body of his wife, Naomi Evelyn Dunstan, was discovered in a well on the orchard on March 10, 1936, 3 or 4 years prior to that. A sugar bag covered the head and lower part of her body, the bag through which her feet protruded, and the body was weighted with bricks. Boards, which were covering the well, had been replaced. Now, the well apparently had some boards on the top of it, which on top of them there was a railway sleeper. Detective Inspector James, who figured in a warm brush with the coroner at the conclusion of Wednesday's inquest, has forwarded a long report to Police Commissioner, who will consider it on Monday. He may send it to the Minister for Justice, Mr. Triat, For inquiry by the Crown Law Office, detectives hope that a new inquiry will be ordered into the deaths of both Dunstan and his wife. Now, this was back in 1940. This was an article in a newspaper back in 1940. Now, I'm just curious, starting at the very beginning. Here's what I want to do today. I'm going to give to people information where you can go and have a look at some of these newspaper articles yourself. And we're just going to go and dig and see what else it tells us about some of these events. It's just for a little bit of fun, something a little bit different. Also, if anyone wants to come in and be part of our panel talking about, discussing, give your opinion on who done it, you're more than welcome to do so. And the link is down there in the chat window if you want to join the panel today. So far, have I done a good explanation of the intro?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So the first thing that we need to do is understand this happened a very long time ago. So how do we actually uncover the evidence of this mystery? It is a long time ago, as I said before, and I'll just move a window out of the way. In Australia, we've got the National Library of Australia, trove.nla.gov.au. And I'll put that window up on the screen. trove.nla.gov.au. Now, if you go to that website yourself, and I encourage you very, very much to do that, and you can help do the research today, because there's a lot of information on this, and I haven't had a chance to read through all of it yet myself. But there's more to find, and I'm seeing, where are we? Greg is hiding the body. What happened to his producer? Thanks, Thunderbird. Okay, so in this Trove website, we type in Alan Ford Dunstan. And on the right over here, we find a number of articles. So, Mystery in the Well, Visit Windsor, and this is where the graphic that we used today came from. And this is the entire page of the newspaper from that day. You can jump in there and read that yourself. We'll go and have a little look through some of these things and see what we think they mean. That's one article. And, you know, we can dig through those and have a bit of fun trying to work out what happened. Does anyone else want to join in today and be part of the inquiry? By the way, just out of interest, I intend to do something with some of this information. Even though it was previously investigated by a coroner, the coroner said it was a double suicide. The wife committed suicide. The wife, who was at the bottom of the well with blocks and bricks and concrete and stuff, and a brick on top of her head inside that bag and a belt around her waist, had committed suicide.
Yeah, well, sounds perfectly plausible to me. I mean, you know, I understand she also put the boards back over the top of the well.
Yeah, so the boards were back on top of the well when she was discovered. So how do you get all of those concrete blocks in there, jump to the bottom, get weighed down, and then somehow get to the top and replace all of the boards?
It was aliens.
Oh, of course.
It makes about as much sense. Just say it was a double suicide.
Yeah. And so, as you said, a double suicide is what it was officially ruled by the coroner. So he said the death of her husband, Alan, some 3 or 4 years later, was also a suicide. He was found with 2 shots to the head from a double-barrel shotgun. For a start, I find it difficult. I don't know the length of a shotgun, but if I was holding it out and trying to pull the trigger on myself, I find that difficult to start with. But to get 2 shots...
Well, with it being a double barrel, it's easy to do, okay, as far to get 2 shots. It requires pulling both triggers. Now, there you go into you have to look at the shotgun, you have to look at the length of it, you have to look at the the gauge of it, what was the gauge, and it could have, if it's say a 410, it might have, the first shot might not have killed him, and the second one did, but generally they don't make 410 gauge, which is about 41 caliber. It's actually 45, but they don't generally make double barrel 410s.
Mm-hmm. I'll take your word for it on that one.
Well, yeah, okay.
Then again, we are Australian. We can do also.
You're Australian, yeah.
Yeah. So I've just pasted in the chat there the name Alan Ford Dunstan and the link trove.nla.gov.au. Encourage people who are reading along today to do that yourself. There's also his wife, whose name I'll post up in just a minute. Let's find his wife.
Thunderbird 410 coach gun. Yeah.
What's that?
Great. Thunderbird 6 said 410 coach gun. Little small caliber, but yeah, it could be used for that. Generally, they used a 20 gauge as a coach gun. Well, here in the States. Now, other places are different, but historically, yeah, they would use a 20 gauge. But yeah, he's right. A 410 double barrel coach gun be perfectly able to do it. But he'd have to not have died from the first shot or pulled both triggers at the same time, which, depending on the circumstances, how you'd have to see the crime scene, or at least see the report of the crime scene to come up with a conclusion.
And here is the weird thing about it. As I said before, this was held in camera. So for some reason, the police said, well, we're not going to have any public gallery. We're not going to publish any report. We're not going to have anything, but just to tell you it was a suicide.
Okay. And I just put a comment up there. He worked in a gun shop, and 410s were available in double barrel. Okay. Yeah.
Let me add one more interesting fact.
Sure.
When Alan Dunstan died, he died intestate without a will. So there was no documented next of kin kind of thing.
Right.
And if you go and take that piece of information and you ask yourself, did they have any children? Answer, no. They didn't have any children. They didn't have a will. And the local town auctioneer also happened to be the same person who was the coroner. The coroner and the local town auctioneer, same guy.
Right. Where he's going to make money off of it, for either from sheriff's auction or whatever, an estate auction, however they chose to do that. Because I don't know how they do it in Australia when they're intestate, but it usually ends up going back to the state.
Yeah. Look, I don't know the answers to everything yet, and I haven't found the answers to those bits yet. But it just seems like, actually, you know what? Let's find out. Alan Ford Dunstan, Naomi Evelyn Dunstan. I stand corrected. I've got to do some more digging. I was looking at the wrong view of that data. They do have some descendants. They do have some children. Doris, Leonard Dunstan, Noel Ford Dunstan, Maxwell Dunstan. Each of those people were born around 1922, 25 or 1930, but don't know whatever happened to them. So I'll go and dig into that and see if I can track them down. So let's keep going. Holy cow, Batman, we could be related, Greg, the same surname. What's your surname, T-Bird? Dunstan or... Yeah,
no, Dawson.
Dawson? Yeah, that's Naomi's maiden name.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah. You're right. I just picked up on that. The only reason I know his name is because I've received mail from him, and I owe him a prize, which will be ordered this weekend.
Okay. So we've got 18 people here, and either this is a boring topic and no one wants to help us join the search,
yeah,
or it's a cold day in the US and a hot day in Australia, or you're all camera shy?
It could be. Yeah.
It's a very hot day in Australia today. I've got fans going everywhere around here today. Let's find another article anyway. So Naomi, what was her name?
Go full screen for just a second. I want to run in and get me a cup of coffee that I had cooking just before the show. No, to your full screen.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'd see an empty camera for a second. I'll be right back. I won't leave you hanging, Greg.
Well, once today is enough.
Yeah, I know.
You had a good reason. Okay. So Naomi Evelyn Dunstan. So that was the other name. And if I go and chuck that into Trove, and I'll put that down on the screen down here in just a moment. If my computer plays nice today. There we go. Let's take out the middle name. I've probably misspelt that. Naomi Dunstan, digitised newspapers. The body of Mrs. Naomi Evelyn Dunstan, who had been missing since late Thursday, was found late this afternoon, in a well near the rear of their house at Sackville North. Police do not suspect foul play. I still find it incredulous that someone weighed down with concrete in a bag with a belt around her waist. It's not foul play. They don't suspect it. The deceased was 35 years of age and the native of Bathurst, where she spent the greater portion of her life, and it's only a few years since she left Bathurst after her marriage to take up residence at Sackville North. She was one of Bathurst's best soprano singers and well known in musical circles. Yeah. The mother of the deceased still resides with her and her son-in-law. So the mother, after this, was still living with Alan, the hubby. So that kind of indicates that it wasn't him that did it if her mother was living with Alan after this all happened. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Just to quickly share with you what we just found in that first article, we found that after the incident, that the mother-in-law, or her mother, was living with Alan on the property afterwards. So that kind of tells you that he didn't do it. It's a reasonable conclusion. I mean, the mother...
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Pardon me, just a little bit thirsty. So let's pick another article. Why haven't I got a back button here? Let me open a new window. So we've got that one.
Because you're using Mac OS.
No, I configured this so that I could do it where the URL bar wasn't on the screen, so I could kind of get more screen space. And
Right.
Yeah, anyway, I'm sure there's a way to do it. Search, books, music.
Oh, and hello, Chris Hope, Geeks Vana, and T-Bird, and everybody else I missed at the start of the show. But I did appreciate it. I'm surprised to see Jeff. I was glad to see him doing the news.
Yep. So let's do this one as a new window, and I'll just throw that one down there. Yeah, Jeff filled in at last notice, and thank you very much, Jeff. Sydney, Sunday night. Search parties were out during the week, and no trace was found of Miss Naomi Dunstan, an ex-Bathurst girl and wife of Mr. Alan Dunstan of Sackville North, who disappeared from her home on Thursday last. Saturday night, Mr. Frank Williams, brother-in-law. Very hard for me to read this. Let me see if I can make that a bit bigger.
Well, now is this over on the left-hand side of the screen? Is that
Well,
it?
the problem is, so it does automatic text parsing, but it's,
Makes mistakes.
It makes mistakes.
Yeah, I noticed that yesterday. Yeah.
People who are interested in some of this history can go and correct it, and I've corrected a lot of articles already, but there's just so much of it. On Saturday night, Mr. Frank Williams' brother-in-law welcomed Mrs. Dunstan, mother, Miss C. Dawson. Although the search had been unsuccessful, the searchers were very hopeful that Mrs. Dunstan will be found alive. Mrs. Dunstan, before her marriage, was Miss Naomi Dawson and a well-known Bathurst girl, yada, 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 yada. Suffered from a nervous breakdown recently. So what are the facts we know? We've got a new fact. So she came from Bathurst. She's a singer. She suffered from a nervous breakdown. She was found at the bottom of a well. Her mother doesn't believe that her husband did it because otherwise she wouldn't be living on the farm with him afterwards.
Right. Unless it's like Steve Mack said, the mother wanted the husband for herself. You know.
Well,
it happens. See it all the time in American mysteries. Actually, you see it all the time in British mysteries too. They're always, mother gets jealous of the daughter and offs her so she can be with the husband. Matter of fact, I actually think that's a Miss Marple
plot line.
Or yeah. It was Professor Plum in the library with a candlestick.
Of course it was.
Have you ever noticed, I mean, this is going with that, but have you ever noticed that that's almost, everybody seems to pick poor Professor Plum and the candlestick, and it's either in the library or in the kitchen? I don't know if it's foregone conclusion in that game or not, but it always seems to be what everybody quotes.
Yeah. What else?
It's always a woman. Yeah.
Look, I'm going to leave this on my... You know what? I might set up this screen capture a different way so that I can capture from my main monitor. You might get a few other bits there. Actually, you know what? I'll put Wirecast down there. That's a good idea. And then I'll set this up so that... Where are we? Lloyd, can you fill and say something interesting while I change this?
He's asking me to say something interesting, like really? Okay. I don't have a thing to say other than I do appreciate that Jeff Sells came in and bailed me out of a situation. Well, actually, he stood in for me. And but if anybody is really interested in this stuff, I mean, I'm intrigued by it. And as Greg has said, I'm sure he's already said that this month he's going to be kind of doing things a little different. Instead of doing the polished, prepared show that he normally does, we're going to be doing this kind of thing. And I find it interesting. And I also, we're on Wirecast, this fancy, this is actually going to be similar to what my new set's going to look like. So there, did I fill enough space so you could get it?
I think so. Can we see this on the screen? I can't tell at the moment. Oh, why is that doing that? Have you got the article? Is it working or not?
I see the article, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sydney, Sunday night. I know what I did. I think I moved it around and let me just click that button to reset position. There we go.
There you go. That's a lot bigger. Yeah.
Okay, and then I can come over here and say Sunday night through search parties were out, no trace was found. Frank Williams' brother-in-law telephoned, etc. Hope that she'll be found alive. That's the one that we just had a look at a few moments ago. So let's find another one. There's 231 government gazette articles on this. Let's go and narrow it down a little bit. We'll go for the decade of that.
One thing that I saw there is, side note, completely irrelevant to this, but the advertisement was to beat the band, and that was a Leslie Howard production. And Leslie Howard played in Gone with the Wind as, I can't remember which one of the guys that he was, but he also played the Scarlet Pimpernel, and he was killed during World War II. Actually, he was a spy for the British.
Okay.
And he actually, they believe, because the Prime Minister of England during World War II looked like a bulldog. My mind just went blank. Everybody knows this. Winston Churchill. Okay.
Yes.
Winston Churchill. Well, Leslie Howard looked like Winston Churchill's assistant, personal assistant. And Leslie Howard's personal assistant happened to look just like Winston Churchill. They left from the airport that Winston Churchill was supposed to leave from, and Winston Churchill went a different route. Mm-hmm. And he made it to where to meet up with, I think, Roosevelt and Stalin. And Leslie Howard was shot down by the Nazis.
Okay.
So, there you go. There's a mystery solved.
Interesting side story. Okay, let's move on. We'll go back over here. Here's the probate. So Naomi Evelyn Dunstan, late of Sackville in the state of New South Wales, married woman, died 5th of March, intestate, didn't have a will. Administration was granted to the public trustee on 27th of May 1937. So that by itself doesn't say anything other than she didn't have a will. So that's another piece of information, another fact. We know he didn't have a will either. Here's another article that I just found. Let's chuck this one up. Possibility that the Naomi Evelyn Dunstan may have met her death by suicide rather than foul play is being closely investigated by police today. And this was in 1936, 11th of March. While it is believed that the woman may have committed suicide, several unusual features of the case have excited the interest of detectives. The well in which the body was found was covered over with boards, which, to have been pulled back into position, would have required that the unfortunate woman remain on the surface of the waterhole. This, they consider, would have been almost an impossible task with such heavy weights attached to her body, which her body, however, showed no outward signs of any injuries. So in other words, she wasn't bruised up and whatnot when they found her. She didn't have any other injuries. Do you think it's possible? I mean, we don't have the physical evidence. We're just looking at what we can find.
It's possible, but in the autopsy, did they check for, chemicals, a poison of sort, or something that might have sedated her?
I don't know the answer to that question. And
certainly
we're talking about the 1940s. Yeah, 1936, 37.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are people saying in the chat? Who do they think done it so far?
Several have said that her mother did it, but they said a woman did it. Let's see. But T-Bird says with a sigh of relief, he has found out he is not related to you after further investigation. So lucky. I don't know which one of you to say lucky you. To both of you, lucky you.
Let's bring this one over.
Sky Storage Studio says, what did I walk into? Sedated her? We're doing a murder mystery here. That's what you walked into.
Just a quick reminder for our viewers that are used to us talking about drones. This is just something a little bit different. It's holiday time. I don't want to have the regular preparation, so no work. This is just doing it on the fly for something that was interesting this week for me.
And this deals with some of your relatives. Let's see.
Correct. So it appears that a sugar bag had been pulled over the woman's head, reaching almost to the waist, and tied with a string around the neck, while the legs were protruding through holes in a corn sack, the bottom of which contained heavy stones. The top of the corn sack was held in position around Mrs. Dunstan's waist by a belt, which had been fastened in the front. The well in which the body was found was covered with boards. And to have these placed in position, Mrs. Dunstan, if she took her own life, she had to remain on the surface of the water for some little time. This would prove very difficult, as we saw in one of the earlier ones. Mrs. Dunstan, for some time before her death, had been suffering from a nervous complaint. Following her disappearance, her husband, Alan Dunstan, communicated with police, but the search was discontinued on Monday, yesterday afternoon. However, a boy lifted the covering of a well near the house and found the body encased in a sugar bag and corn sack floating near the surface of the water. While they have not overlooked the possibility of suicide, police are investigating a theory that the woman was the victim of foul play.
Yeah. So did they say the legs were protruding through holes in the bottom of the sack?
Yes.
So what they're trying to say is this lady put rocks in the bottom of the sack, cut a couple holes in it, stuck her legs through each side so she could walk to the well, then pulled it up to her waist, put a belt around it, then pulled it up over her head, and then somehow
it was a
tied
separate
a
bag. It was a separate bag.
Oh.
So the other bag on her head was going down. The hole on that bag, let me put my own camera so I can talk to you. There we go.
Okay.
That bag was downwards and tied around her neck, so there was no opening at the top.
Okay. So she could have put and tied that around. She could have put the other one up and tied it at the waist, with the belt.
So far, that is a possibility.
Right. And then she could have waddled out to the well and jumped in. Still a real stretch of the imagination. I mean, even in the 1930s in Australia, there's other ways to die than, going to all that trouble, especially if she was really, really wanting to kill herself. She would have, I don't know. That just sounds like she was assisted. There again, maybe it was assisted suicide.
Yeah. What else have we got? That one's a short little one. This one says foul play is not suspected. I won't bother putting it on the screen.
Sky Stories does bring up something. I've seen Vegas musicians do less. And was she was an entertainer, right? Or a dancer of some sort?
Singer.
A singer. She could have been around enough magicians to seen that sort of type of act to picked up a few tidbits.
She'd give it a go?
Yeah, well, she picked up the tidbits of how to put the sack over her head and over her waist and all that. Yeah. Bob Casey says foul play. I really, the whole boards over the well type thing. That's, unless the husband was just like, oh, some kid's been messing with the well again. I'll just put these boards back up, and didn't bother to look in. When his wife's missing, yeah.
Let's go for the next one. This one, Sydney on Friday, the circumstances of the death of Mrs. Naomi Evelyn Dunstan, whose body was found, yada, 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 was revived by the memory was revived by the tragic death of her husband, Mr. Alan F. Dunstan, today. So it tells the story of Mrs. Dunstan, fine. Then on Christmas Day, according to statements to the police, an argument took place in the Dunstans' home in which a woman was involved, and detectives were told that Dunstan had discussed the death of his wife, stating that the neighbours accused him of killing her. He then appeared depressed and mentioned his intention of making a will. Inspector James and other detectives went to the home to take statements as to the cause of the quarrel. Dunstan then denied having discussed his wife's death or having made any admissions. Today, Inspector James returned to the orchard to continue the inquiry, but before he reached there, the body of Dunstan had been found with his head shattered by a shotgun which was lying near the body. Detectives are convinced that Dunstan was not responsible for the death of his wife. Now, so the shotgun's next to his body. So they've got the weapon.
Right.
The coroner.
But they're convinced. Yeah.
The coroner, who is the same person who investigated the wife, investigates the husband. He's the only one in the area.
Right.
And he says, no. It was suicide. It was definitely suicide. Let me do this. I'm just going to search.
I can
I'm going to
see
search
the
for the most
possibility
recent one.
I can see the possibility that the wife did it. Okay, or I mean, the wife was murdered by her husband, and the husband committed suicide with a double-barrel shotgun. That's more plausible than anything. But the funny thing was the police went and talked to, who was the woman he was arguing with about all this? And yeah, of course, the neighbor's going to say he killed his wife. That would happen. That would happen in today's times, and it certainly would have happened back then too. So, but there seemed to be some weird circumstances there. First
Speaking
off,
of which,
well, it was his mother-in-law. It was his mother-in-law wanted to know where her daughter was at. Right? Who was it who started the initial search for her?
yeah, let's have a look at this one. This one's a pretty big article. What prompted the coroner to hold an inquest on Wednesday into the death of Alan Ford Dunstan in secret? That's the question. The coroner didn't say why he wanted to hold it in secret. Only he knows, yet the suicide is linked by a chain of circumstances over a period of more than 3.5 years. It's one of the most amazing and mysterious tragedies ever to reach the archives of the CIB. The CIB doesn't exist anymore, but that's another story.
Right.
The method adopted by Coroner Johnson in withholding important facts from public knowledge in this case arouses grave public disquiet. The Minister for Justice announced that in view of what has occurred in the last few weeks with regard to coronial inquiries, steps will be taken to ensure that in future inquests will be conducted by experienced and qualified magistrates. So he's trying to say that this guy wasn't experienced or qualified.
This guy... Okay, he's a county auctioneer, or the local auctioneer. He probably had money. He bought the job. That happened a lot in those days.
Possible.
The most prosperous man, a lot of times the most prosperous man was the one who got appointed, or one of the prosperous members of the community got appointed as coroner because they thought, well, they're one of the lordship. They obviously, they must know this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Over here we've got, let's have a look, let's move up a bit. Inspector James, I may say again, Your Worship, that you are wrong. I say again that your remarks are unwarranted. Attack upon the police in the performance of their duties in the interest of the public. So basically the coroner said, I'm holding it in camera, and he was chastising the police. I haven't got all of these in front of me in a certain order at the moment, but these are things that I've seen. And the coroner later says, I don't wish to retract what I have said. So the police are going up against the coroner and it's just a he said, she said, pointing fingers at each other. Right.
Yeah, it sounds like where's the coroner and Mr. Dunstan good friends?
Don't know. Haven't found that yet. So, I tell you what we're going to do now. We've reached an hour since we started today.
Yep.
And for those who are regulars on my show, you'll know that I normally keep it only to an hour. I would ask that anyone who's interested in helping to try and solve the murder mystery, continue to go and have a look through that Trove website. Click on there, search for Naomi Dunstan or Alan Ford Dunstan, and see what you come up with. There's a whole heap of things there. We'll be back again next week. I don't know what we're going to do, what we're going to look at, but it was a mystery. of murder most foul.
Only the shadow knows what evil lurks in the heart of men. Actually.
And the question is, what is beneath from the well?
Only the shadow knows what evil lurks in the heart of men.
Okay.
I know,
Enough
creepy,
of
right?
that. Yeah, you're creeping me out a little bit. Let me see if I can find the chat just to have one last peekaboo before we go. It was Deputy Head. Got to run. Time for dinner. Mrs. Dunstan were good friends? ? I don't know.
And did he leave a note? Did either one of them leave a note? That's the
no notes.
That's one of the,
no notes. No notes.
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, that's.
Did she know Hillary Clinton?
She is pretty old.
Geese pushed her in, thus it's foul play involved.
Oh my God. Well,
Yeah. Anyway, next week we're back again. I don't know if I'll do a little bit more of this. I might spend a little bit of time collating some of these articles. If you've got time and you're interested in helping solve the mystery, you can log on to that Trove website and you can go and make edits on the text to match the image, if you know what I mean. So correct the text and help it to be searchable and indexable. And,
yeah.
That'd be really helpful. So that's all. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of the Oz by Drone crew, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.